knows everything about the Buckeyes. He's been offered tens of dollars by a certain team to spill his secrets. He's told that certain team to go to hell.
Damn you all to hell!
He's Austin Ward.
Joins on the Bryant Heating and Cooling Systems fan guest hotline. This is where I am with this team. Like, the conspiracy theorist in me was like, okay, hand it to C.J. Donaldson. Not that they anticipated him fumbling, but just to create drama going into half. I have no idea. I'm trying to find. This is Penn State, bud. This is Penn State, for God's sakes. It never felt in doubt. It never felt like they weren't going to cover. It was 17-14 at half, and Ryan said it felt like he was down 21. It felt like they were up 40 to me.
Yeah, it was the most comfortable three-point lead I've ever seen in my life. There was never a point where I thought there was any jeopardy for Ohio State. I mean, really, once the first drive was over, that's how I felt. But, right before halftime, that was the only real puzzling piece of that game, whether that was the actual play call in a situation where Ohio State could have been aggressive and tried to win that middle eight, or whether it was the personnel. If they were going to catch Penn State off guard with that run, I'm not sure that C.J. Donaldson was the guy who could turn that into an explosive play, but that is the level of nitpicking that we are at with Ohio State right now, is that it was one play, one turnover, one person on the field, that even Ryan Day was on Saturday night was like, at some point he caught himself because he brought it up like 3 times himself. We weren't even talking about it really that much in the press conference. He was like, but if you had told me 2 months ago, and even probably on Tuesday, knowing how talented and the matchup tag that he put on Penn State, that they were going to win by 24, that he would take that in a heartbeat. But that's the level that the Buckeyes are dealing with right now. And it does play into, Beau, a lot of what he says week after week after week, where it is about Ohio State. It is not about their opponent. It is about their execution, because they have to make mistakes for opponents to even have a chance to beat them. That's the rare air that they are at right now.
Well, and they have a quarterback who's allergic to mistakes.
He is. And he's awesome.
What do we do with this guy? This is crazy. 20-23 against Penn State?
Yeah, more touchdowns than incompletions. That is a crazy stat, because Penn State, maybe missing one linebacker, but that was the defense that, in terms of personnel, they were very healthy. They paid $3.1 million to bring in a coordinator to unlock another level of production from them, and Julian Sayin made them look absolutely foolish. And, I said a couple of weeks ago, you and I talked about this on a bunch of Mondays, that there's going to come a point where Jeremiah Smith's greatness is going to be taken for granted, and his stats won't be able to keep up with what Julian Sayin is doing, which is also a reminder and a tribute to what Carnell Tate is doing, Brandon Ennis, Max Clare as well. But on Saturday, Beau, there were still a handful of national media members that came to this game, and they were sitting down the row from me, and they were like, I think they have it in their mind that the version that played against Texas, when the training wheels were on from the coaching staff, through no fault of Julian Sayin's, I wouldn't say, but they were like, when they said then he can do more, they have given him more. And I think a lot of the voters weren't paying attention to just how dominant Julian Sayin has been for the last 7 games. And I think Saturday broke them out of that mentality that it's just Jeremiah or it's just a product of the system. And it was the scramble, I think, more than anything, that people like.
Yep.
I was sitting next to Chris Lowe and Andy Staples, and they were like, I didn't know that he could do that. So, well, we're finding out what he can do every single week as well. But the rest of it is still at such a high level. And I don't, maybe it'll come down to a head-to-head against Indiana in the Big Ten championship game. I don't know that it should, but this guy's going to New York City. There's no doubt about it. And I think that he is going to break this streak for Ohio State and put his hands on the actual trophy in the middle of December.
He's going to win it this year, next year, and I think him and Four are both going. So, that's my hunch on how this thing all plays out. But what you hit on there is, if we think it's bad over the last month in terms of folks not paying attention to the dude nationally, like just on social and watching like half times of the other programs, watching games on Saturday.
Yeah,
this was treated like you beat Purdue, who, by the way, you play this week. It was treated like, oh, yeah, Buckeyes, when are they ever going to play anybody? I'm like, dude, this was Penn State as all in as Penn State can be. No, Drew Aller didn't play. James Franklin's been fired. Rojas is out at linebacker. It's one linebacker, for God's sakes. This is as close to a talent equates game as you're going to play until the end of the year, and it's the most talent equates game you played since Texas.
Yeah, and they looked like they barely wanted to break a sweat doing it. And I know that this approach can be even frustrating for Ohio State fans. You had The Athletic, you talked about some of the social media coverage. The Athletic wrote a story, the headline had Buckeyes with a bunch of Z's at the end as if we're supposed to be lulled to sleep. But I don't, I don't think that what should be going on right here should bore anybody or be taken for granted. And it's not by coincidence that Ryan Day has adopted that as part of his messaging to this team. Don't get bored by winning and keeping the focus on themselves, because and I don't think that necessarily applies to Penn State, because I thought they had a really good plan, Penn State, and especially on offense. Katron Allen's still a very good running back, and they had opportunities to make some plays, and they capitalized as well as they could, but they were up against a buzzsaw. And it's managing the reps, managing some of the playbook. That's a smart approach. They do not need false confidence. They don't need style points by blowing teams out by 50 the way it might benefit Indiana. And I don't mean that as a slight to them, but Ohio State knows what it can become. And I don't think it has to stress from one Saturday to the next right now, because it's building this methodically, and it is managing, the wear and tear so that it can play deep into January. And I don't really even know, Beau, what it would take for this team when it taps into its full potential to get beat. And that's not to say that they're indestructible, or that any time that the focus can lapse in college football. I understand all that, but they can do anything that you want them to do, and they're a Death Star.
Yeah, it's a machine. I suppose to answer the question, what I would think is, and I agree with you, I think Penn State offensively had a really good plan. I don't know what the hell Jim Knowles was thinking in the first half, going man on the outside. That was crazy.
Yeah, no.
But I was just nuts. But I thought their plan in the first half is the plan. I mean, I think that's what you have to do. You have to just try to bludgeon Ohio State and try to run it on them. Now they adjusted. Patricia adjusted at half, and then it's completely shut down. And right. So that's probably it. I think this is going to be a very difficult next 3 weeks for this team. I think it's going to be a real challenge on Ryan Day. I think it's going to be difficult for those of us who talk about him, because there is no threat, and we're all just looking at the other Death Star at the end of the month, right? And so It's this is going to be a very odd next 3 weeks, not just for that team, but for the fan base and for those of us that cover this team.
Yeah, and I think that, now you certainly embrace that part of Ryan Day's coaching approach, that it is about Ohio State. You have to do that for one, but then you're looking for specific challenges and ways that a team can beat you and test you that would apply. Nobody in the next 3 weeks, I don't think, can really do it the way that Michigan will try when they get to the Big House. But I'm almost, and I know that you can't do this, I'm not taking it for granted, but that Indiana game, I think you can book it, that it's going to happen. And then you're talking about, well, how does another matchup with Nico Iamaleava next week against UCLA, what does that mean? Because if you're looking for the ideal blueprint to try and copy a dual threat quarterback who is capable of not making mistakes down the field the way that Arch Manning did, or that Ethan Drunkmeyer was not able to, there were chances to make some plays against us that were missed. Does Nico give you a look that maybe applies to how you want to defend Indiana and Mendoza when you get to Indianapolis? And I know that no one wants to fast forward past the rivalry. Ryan Day's got to get that one done. But when I talk about the ability to change styles, I think that this team is positioned in a way that maybe the last few versions of Ohio State were not. Now, that would require still another maybe step forward from the rushing attack, although I thought that did happen against Penn State. 5 yards per carry. You saw some of the long hits, Bo Jackson especially with the 51-yarder. You've seen Isaiah West, stacking up some double-digit carries. I think that part is coming along. And we spent the last few weeks also talking about Tegra Shabola, and I thought that he was pretty solid at right guard. So you're seeing this team get better and better every week, which is also what's narrowing the path for even the best teams in the country to upset them.
All right, I'll get you out of here on this one. By their choosing, we won't see Penn State in the regular season again until 2028. Right. I don't blame them. I mean, they've lost 13 of 14. I think it's shameful the Big Ten let it happen. What do you believe Penn State will be the next time we see them as a program in the regular season?
Boy, I think they're going to be a lesser version. And there may not be a bigger James Franklin critic on the planet than me, but what the level he got them to is not going to be easy to duplicate. And, when you see a lot of these coaches that do not want to go to Happy Valley. They don't want to recruit to State College. The NIL piece is, even when they stepped it up, I think it's still lacking behind when that comes to the infrastructure overall. Now they have the complication of, staff buyouts and all that, payment that is going to non-personnel, really on the field personnel. I think it's going to be difficult for them to actually sustain the level that James Franklin put them at, if I'm being totally honest with you. So, if they land Jeff Brom, they've taken a couple swings here, and Signetti got more money, Matt Rule got more money. Brom is somebody that I think I'm pretty intrigued by. I don't think Ohio State fans would want to see him go to get some of that resources and the backing that Penn State has, even if it's relatively less compared to Ohio State. But I think James Franklin actually did a better job of building them up to a higher floor, and then the ceiling just wasn't where Penn State wanted it to get to. I personally have a hard time thinking that they're going to match the floor, but we'll see what they wind up doing. If they get Brom, maybe I'll change my mind.
Yeah, and what you just said is exactly why it took so long to get rid of him, right?
Exactly.
And
yep.
Because of what you just said, they're terrified of becoming Nebraska. So that's it. Great stuff as always, buddy. We'll talk again next week. Thanks for your time.
All right, appreciate you both. See you.
All right, there he goes. Austin Ward, The Beat with Austin Berman, the Roosters live show on YouTube on the Brian Heating Cooling Systems Fan Guest Hotline.